Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Today let's work on some mount escapes with some of the beginner students. Here Xiao attempts to maintain mount and land strikes. My goals are very simple: stand up, get on top, or work for submission. Next up in this lineup, I'm going to call this dude Bob. He comes to my classes very infrequently, usually just the boxing classes, but he decided to help us out with this drill today, and he's working very hard to stay on top with very little grappling knowledge. I regard and sweep him right into an arm bar. Next up in the lineup is Fang. Fang has a judo background. The dude is a total stud because he's working with some back braces on, actually. He got into a horrific car accident which just absolutely crippled him, but he's clawed his way back up, and we filmed this video a couple weeks ago. He's actually been able to take the back braces off while working. Anyway, Xiao is working really hard to maintain mount. I hip escape out and do a technical get up. And Bob is back up. One of Bob's big mistakes is that he's sitting on my hips. And when you sit on your opponent's hips and mount, you are forced to move wherever they move. So mount is not a sitting position, it should be a riding position. All right, Fang moves to mount. Again, working the ground and pound, getting aggressive there. But again, since his hips were connected to mine, I was able to easily bridge and roll. Mount escapes can be subdivided into basically three categories. There are a lot more than just three mount escapes, but essentially three categories: hip escaping, bridging and rolling, and trapping a leg into half guard. What I did right there, that's escaping out the back door. When somebody lifts up a leg like that, yeah, and you get both arms under, make sure it's both, not just one, or you can get caught in a triangle choke. Worse yet, a mounted triangle choke. Yeah, you can escape out the back door. That's more the rare exception, not the norm. Fang, he moves into a low mount, trying to put a lot of pressure on. He's actually trying a no-gi Ezekiel choke here, which is possible. It has been done. Since he's wearing boxing gloves, he's going to have a really hard time with that, since he's not able to grasp his own forearms, which is what it would take to finish that Ezekiel choke. So I'm able to hip escape out to the side and take the back. Now, if these guys were working to maintain top position, I would advise them to change their position when their balance becomes compromised. And that's something a lot of people don't really understand about maintaining mount or maintaining side control or knee mount, is that if you just camp out there, eventually, if the guy on the bottom knows what he's doing, he will find a way out. So, again, when your balance is compromised, it's okay to bail on that position and move to a more stable one. I'll show you an example of that later as I'm rolling with a black belt. So, again, Xiao working really hard to maintain that mount. Bob is back up, very enthusiastic, this guy, again making that mistake of sitting on the hips. So, when he does that, I'm able to pretty much use any mount escape that I want, but he's putting a lot of pressure on, even for a little guy. Unfortunately, that worked out against him, as I was able to elevate or sweep him. Fang is trying again for that Ezekiel choke, which, again, it's not going to happen with those boxing gloves on, and it's very difficult to do without the gi. Again, he comes from a judo background, and those sleeve grips are in his muscle memory. But he is putting a ton of pressure on me. But eventually I'm just able to pry myself out. I do have the advantage of being bigger and stronger than all of these guys. Now, one of the reasons I'm doing this drill and I'm showing you this drill is to show you that you can improve with any type of training partner. There's that out the back door escape again when your opponent lifts the leg up. Even if you're training with absolute beginners like Bob here, who knows absolutely nothing about grappling, you can use this experience to drill techniques you already know and to drill techniques that you're just learning, especially the latter. And Fang is moving to the low mount, sprawling his hips down into my hips, which is a really smart thing to do. But since he's not controlling my head, elevating the back of my head off the ground, I'm easily able to bridge and roll. Xiao's back up here, trying to move into a high mount. But again, in an attempt to maintain control, he starts hugging my head and is not able to land any strikes. I'm able to move out to a heel hook attempt. Again, I like to play a game of catch and release with the heel hooks. I'll get into position to finish and then switch to something else. There's no need whatsoever to tear up your training partner's ACLs, especially if they don't know what a heel hook is, man. Really, there's no reason to do that at all. So another bridge and roll escape with Bob right there. Fangs back up. Bound and determined to make this low mount Ezekiel work. And yeah, again, it's a lot of pressure. He's cutting off the space. He's not doing any damage, though. When the objective of mount for mixed martial arts is to do damage, you have to, at the very least, give yourself the space to hit the other person. If you're just grabbing and squeezing, you're not doing damage. You're giving him opportunities to escape. Unless you're way ahead on the scorecard and you're just stalling for time, squishing him a little bit. But if nothing's happening, referees will sometimes stand you up. Not always, but sometimes. Anyway, I regard. And, yep, get a sweep. Xiao is back up once again. Now he's hugging the head there, postures up a little bit, throws a couple of strikes on my guard. I attempt to bridge and roll. Xiao balances, throws a few more strikes. He's doing a pretty good job of trying to maintain high mount right here where he can have position to land strikes. But I unbalance him and reverse him. Bob is back up, still sitting on the hip, still making that basic mistake. So when I bridge, he moves with me. When I lift the hips, he moves with the hips because he's sitting on them. But he's learning. Here I have to attempt several different mount escapes. One after the other, I escape to half guard, transition to full guard. Now he's squeezing me really tight, throwing those little tiny punches, which allows me to secure his arms. I'm thinking about a double arm bar here, but he's putting the pressure on there, so he recognizes the danger. That's good. I want these guys to learn, right? I want even the newest, smallest, weakest guys in the class to one day be a formidable challenge to everybody they step on the mat with. Fangs back up again. He likes that low mount. It's very important to remember mount isn't just one position, it's several. Low mount being one of those, where you sprawl your hips down. He's doing a good job of trying to control my legs with grapevines. I'm using some tricks to break those grapevines. He's still trying for that no-gi Ezekiel choke, which, again, is going to be extremely difficult with boxing gloves on. And I bridge and roll out of it. Xiao is back up for his turn. Tries to transition to high mount, but he's making the mistake of putting his hands on the floor. Remember, you want to keep your weight on the man and off the mat. But overall doing a better job than he was before of posturing up. But like I said before, if you simply focus on maintaining one position instead of transitioning when you're compromised, eventually the guy on the bottom gets out if he knows what he's doing. Bob comes back for another one. He's being really nice with those punches. Just pitter-patter ones, but yeah, he is learning. Something that is super important to remember about mount escapes, really any technique at all, offensive or defensive, is that you need at the very least a solid plan A and a complementary plan B. As you'll notice, once these guys start catching on to my movement patterns, they start adapting. And so right here, I'm trying to hip escape to shrimp, but Xiao shuts that down. He pinches his knees together, so I try to bridge and roll. Xiao adjusts his position, lands a strike, and so I have to modify my technique here. I make some space, I hip escape a little, and I continue to bridge and roll, combining these two techniques, plan A, plan B, plan A, plan B, just flip-flopping between the two until one of them works. Bob is back up. Again, still making that mistake, sitting close to the hips, but he is getting a little bit higher, so he's able to balance a little better. Just giving simple tips over the internet, like do this, do that, don't really help so much as far as mount maintenance goes. It's kind of like riding a bull. You have to actually ride the bull to get used to that kind of pressure, that kind of imbalance. My hip escape to butterfly guard here. Xiao starts standing a little bit. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to work X guard. He drops that knee to the floor. I bail on the X guard. And now we're working standing fighter versus down fighter right here, which gives me the space to stand back up. Bob comes back again, throws those little punches right there. I bridge a little bit and move to my side, attempting to hip escape. I grab the single leg into half guard, holding his posture down a little bit while I'm trying a stomp on the calf right there to change my position, maybe into a full guard, where it will be easier to escape or attack. Bob didn't give me the space, so I rolled over and swept him from my half guard with those windmill arms. Xiao back on top, nice high mount position. Definitely learned from his previous errors. This is a great drill for both the new guys and the more experienced guys. You both learn from it. And this is a goofy, flippy-dippy thing that I've never done before, leading into a triangle choke. But when you understand the basics, you don't need to practice a bunch of goofy, flippy-dippy things, because they will just happen all by themselves when your basics are good. Now let's look at a more effective example of how to maintain top control. Here's a short clip from a Jiu-Jitsu class from last year. We're going to watch this clip twice. Here I'm rolling with Professor Guy. He's a second-degree black belt from Brazil. Excellent Jiu-Jitsu, and he's doing some really, really intelligent things to maintain top control to counter every one of my escape attempts. Don't worry, we'll break this down step by step in just a moment. Pay close attention to each transition. Even those pesky grips on the uniform that you will never see in MMA, because contrast is a valuable teacher. Starting in side control, I frame under Professor Guy's neck, bridge to make space for my hip escape to re-guard. And as I do so, he transitions immediately to mount in order to stabilize. But doing so has brought Guy's hands down to the mat, so I trap one and attempt to bridge and roll. Guy brings one foot up, stabilizing on that side, which gives me the space I now need to hip escape. But before I can re-guard, Professor Guy kicks over, stabilizing, makes some frames, and then immediately jumps over into side control. Right back to where we began, I make frames from side control, attempt to hip escape and re-guard. It's going pretty well until Professor Guy cartwheel passes right over before I can stabilize into guard, but not allowing him to establish a firm side control, I hip escape again, thinking I can re-guard from here. But nope, he hops over to the other side, threatening me with side control right there. I attempt a Granby roll right here, but check out that grip right there. The grip on my pants creates a frame, shutting down my Granby roll attempt so I cannot re-guard. And ultimately, Professor Guy is able to transition into back mount. Next, let's look at an MMA sparring example. Here I'm sparring with my student Andrew. It's very quick, just a quick clip, a few seconds, a few transitions, but we're going to break it down and look at what happened right here. I start with an elevator sweep, but before I can stabilize in side control, Andrew threatens to get his right knee under my body and re-guard. I shut down Andrew's knee by transitioning to scarf hold. Andrew threatens to unbalance me by framing against my neck with his left arm. I shut down the frame, sliding under Andrew's left arm into standard side control, but he's able to re-establish the frame. Now Andrew has the potential to escape my side control, so I go with the pressure of the frame instead of against it, posturing up into knee mount where I can land strikes. Reacting to the strikes, Andrew begins to roll away. I drop my knee into full mount. Andrew pops up to his knees, attempting an escape, but it's already too late, and I begin to establish back mount before the bell rings. Thanks for watching, guys. Drill those fundamentals. Now get out there and train. NoGiBJJGear.com is now xmartial.com, serving your needs beyond just no-gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, find brand new equipment for mixed martial arts, kickboxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, and more at xmartial.com. As always, use my code Ramsey10 for 10% off everything on the website. Once again, that's xmartial.com.